Huh?
Yay!
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fit Through Love Show. I'm your host, Adrienne Rivera, and today we've got an exciting special guest, Karla Clark, who is a metaphysical teacher and healer. And today we're diving into what metaphysics is and how you can have a better understanding of it so that you can apply it to your life and ultimately have the best lifestyle. Welcome to the show, Karla.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adrienne.
Yeah, we're so excited that you're here. This is unlike anything that we've had so far.
All right.
So, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to us a little bit more.
Sure. So yeah, I've been working with magic and energetic traditions and metaphysics for more than 30 years, actually almost 35 years now. And that can span a lot of different things. So really the whole thing is trying to get to the underlying energy of what creates reality and fundamental foundations and philosophies of reality. And so there's all different things, like religions have their own way, and then shamanic traditions have their own way. And I also work in a universal tradition that goes back more than 8,000 years, and it has its own way as well. And so there's lots of ways we can understand reality, but what I really like is working with the practical aspect of that so that we can actually use it to shift things in our life instead of just have the philosophy hanging way out in the ether.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's awesome. So, how'd you get into all of that?
Yeah, I've been pretty magical ever since I was very small. Like I was born on Halloween, so I feel like that was a little warning sign for everybody. But I was always attracted to different things beyond just like religion or beyond the concrete sort of concepts that we get in school or at work. And I actually started getting training in like Kundalini yoga and different shamanic practices when I was quite young. I was sneaking out to do that. Some people sneak out to drink, and I was sneaking out to learn tricks, magic, and everything. But I really dedicated my life to it about 20 years ago, and like fully. I used to be a pharmacologist, and I used to do anthropological work as well, and academia. And I really just switched gears because part of it for me is I really wanted to help people really get beyond the limits of where we think we can actually be in life. And for me, that manifested as like really severe medical problems, that Western medicine said couldn't be healed, or that I'd be on certain kinds of horrible medication for my whole life. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And with the tradition that I found that's universal, I did have healing from that, so I don't have to like live my life on 6 kinds of steroids or dialysis or any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like it actually caused very real physical healing for me, and I've seen it cause like amazing mental and physical healing for a lot of people, and so that's why I do this
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned tricks. Talk a little bit more about that. Is it witchcraft? Like,
work.
what is what is the definition of magic?
Yep. So magic to me is changing nothing into something or something into something else. So all of us can do some kind of magic, right? If you go into the kitchen and you cook something, you're changing something into something else, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool if you can change nothing into something. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
metaphysics is about, right? Like bringing through something that was not there before and creating something completely new. That's like high magic from what I consider it to be. And so with metaphysics, so one of the tools that I use in that is called universal Kabbalah. So some people might have heard Kabbalah from the Jewish tradition, which is fine. I mean, that just happens to be associated with that religion, but we work with it, not associated with any religion, so that anybody can use it. You don't have to be Jewish or 40 or a man, which is the traditional way. But with universal Kabbalah, it's actually about how do we work with all these fundamental energies of the universe, and how do we practically use it in our life to bring through new creations,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very specific alchemical process we go through. So it's something we've repeated and repeated over and over for thousands of years, so we know how that process works, and each person that uses it, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you say uses it, how do they use it?
Yeah. So, I mean, each person will use something for their expression, but let's say for me personally, like the first time I did the 10-month work with Kabbalah, it's a 10-month process. So it's a long alchemical process to learn to get to use the tools, which could be rituals, prayer, meditation, journaling, different actions that you take. And for me, like what I want to transform in my first 10 months of that was mental illness, actually. Like, so I had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I'd been diagnosed with a lot of different instances of complex PTSD. I dealt with a lot of violence. And, Western medicine would have said that I would have been on medication the rest of my life for those things. And probably they would say that the PTSD isn't able to be healed. Like that's often, you're just like in therapy to kind of keep yourself able to function somewhat in society, but not to really heal. And in that 10 months, that's what I transformed. So I no longer, and this is, more than 12 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, I no longer am triggered by any of the things of the PTSD. I haven't needed medication for the bipolar disorder. I've been stable and fine. So to me, that's what I wanted to transform. And that was by using the tools, which are the rituals, the meditation, and all kinds of other things too, like essential oils or crystals. There's a lot of different things that you can use in your life. And it's about shifting the daily foundation of your life so that then you're bringing in different energies to use, and then your life is changed.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
mentioned that it was like a year-long journey.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about like what it looks like. Is there a structure? Is there a way to do it wrong? Like, is it, is it whatever you feel like doing that certain day? Like, do you just wake up one day and say, I feel like journaling, as opposed to using essential oils? And how much time should be devoted to all of this?
Right. So there's a lot of different levels to it, and so I actually teach like the first introductory weekend that you would need if you wanted to do the whole 10-month process. And that's actually initiation. And so what that does is that weekend gives you the tools to use kind of at your own will. Like you're saying, like, okay, like today I want to do this, like journal or pray or meditate. And then this day I'll do this, so you can pick and choose kind of that way of how you use the tools. When you actually are in the 10-month Kabbalah process, then there is an actual structure to it, so each person in class, they would want you to be doing a certain like meditation and ritual for a certain period of time. Maybe that month everyone was doing kind of the same thing as best as they could. It's not obviously a perfect thing. We have lives, so we're not spending like 3 hours a day on it or something, but anything that people can do is helpful. What you put in is what you get out. But like for the first weekend, which actually we'll have here in San Diego at the end of the month, the 25th and 26th, it's really a deep dive into what the tools are, and how to start using the rituals to actually wield your power. So that's part of that underlying work of metaphysics, is really learning like what these unseen energies are and how to work with them in a positive way. But yes, to your question of if there's a wrong way to do it, yes, there is. So, yes. That's why we have this ancient lineage and structure, so things have been handed down to me the way they've been handed down for thousands of years. And there's a reason for the formula looking a certain way, kind of like if you wanted to make aspirin in the chemistry lab, you'd use a
Mm,
certain formula. And if you did it wrong, you wouldn't get aspirin, you'd have something else, right? And it's the same thing with ritual work. So you want to do rituals that are from a tradition handed down as they are, but you can use them for different things, right? So if I was doing a ritual to call in energies, I can choose which energies I want to call in and for what purpose. Like
mm.
maybe I want to call in angels of healing to help me heal, or angels of healing to help a client heal, or something like that. You can do that, but you want to do the ritual physically the same way that it's handed down.
I gotcha. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So what are some examples of rituals that you can do?
Yeah, when I do the Empower Thyself class, so that's the 2-day class that gets you prepared for Universal Kabbalah. I hand down definitely what's called a calling upon rituals. That's how to call in energies like angelic energies or energies of Master of Light. And that can sound kind of out there to people that don't have a spiritual practice, but really it's calling in a certain frequency. And frequency has been a lot more in people's minds the last couple years. And that's really what it is. I mean, all of us beings vibrate at a different frequency. And so you're learning the specific way to really call and wield that, because it's like if I were to go out in the street and just yell in the corner, Adrian, help, like you may or may not hear me, right? Because you're like in Encinitas and I'm in San Diego. Not the best way, but if I dial your number on the phone, I can get you, right? And
Right.
with a ritual, like a lineage ritual, it's got the key to be able to really like get that energy and use it, and also the authority to do it. So the calling upon ritual is one. I hand down a ritual that's for working with the 4 elements, so earth, water, air, and fire. And in this tradition and a lot of shamanic traditions, those are considered to be the foundational aspects of creation. So if you want to create anything in the physical, you need those elements. And like each shamanic practice has a different way to work with it. And I'm trained in 4 styles of shamanic work also, so I do have different ways to work with it. But I also hand down in this universal tradition, and it's a really healthy thing for us to do, is to interact with those elements on a daily basis. And living in Southern California, we're lucky because we can go to the beach, so we can really interact. We can have our feet in the sand and go in the water and have the sun on us and the wind, so that's a good way to do it. But then if you have this really potent ancient ritual that's been used the same way for a long time, it also helps you really solidly call in these different energies to use for what you want to create. So there's like the calling upon ritual, there's a way of working with elements. There's also, I hand down 2 protection rituals in that weekend. One of them is a personal protection ritual. And a lot of people have been using the word empath recently, right? In the last probably
Mm-hmm.
8 years, and people are becoming aware that that's something happening with them. And part of what that is that a lot of people aren't taught how to manage their own energy field. And
Right.
absorbing everything from everybody else, and it can be very disabling. Like I experienced that myself, and that's part of why I had like mental illness problems in the past. I didn't have a good boundary of energies for myself and other people, and so the personal protection ritual really solidifies the aura. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a really nice boundary, and so it keeps out the energies that you don't want from outside of you and helps you keep in the energies that you do want that you're creating. And so that one's really potent. And sometimes I have people come for initiation that really just are coming for that ritual because they want protection, and that's
Right.
fine if that's why people are coming and that's what they need and that helps them, especially people that serve other people, right? Like nurses or healers or coaches. Like we all are really in other people's energy field a lot, and it can get draining if we're not managing our energy well. So that's another one. And then there's a space protection ritual too. So sometimes when people are like sensitive, then also they need to protect their space so that energies aren't coming in from outside. And so you can really have a distraction free experience of like sleep and meditation and yoga, like in your own space. I'm trying to think, there's like 6 rituals I hand out that weekend. Oh, and then I do hand down a Kabbalistic ritual, which starts to weave the energies for Universal Kabbalah for people, which is really getting to all the vibrational frequencies of that creational energy of what's called the Tree of Life. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a glyph that we use. I've got a picture I can probably put on there. Yay!
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome.
So learning
Beautiful.
those energies. Um, and it's a really good foundation, like sometimes I do have people that come in just for initiation weekend and that's what they use for the rest of their life. Like it's just those rituals, and that's fine. Like it all depends like how much someone wants to really dig in, because you could dig in like your whole life to especially like Universal Kabbalah and not learn everything. It's a very endless
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Where does
tradition.
it come from? What
Yeah.
are the origins?
Yeah. So Kabbalah, we would say in our tradition, like it came in as universal, and then it got kind of parsed out into different religions that took pieces of it to use for how they wanted, because each religion has its own tradition. But yeah, we would say it was something that we brought with us before we came here in the physical body. So it was kind of our roadmap home. And so we weren't left without an instruction manual, which is nice because I know a lot of us end up on Earth and we're like, oh, what
Mm-hmm.
is this? How do I do this? Where is the manual? And it really energetically is. It's really cool. I mean, like for me, especially because I had studied a lot of different traditions before I did the Universal Kabbalah, especially like yoga and acupuncture and herbs and different kinds of shamanic traditions and all this. It was very interesting because the Universal Kabbalah actually had pieces of all that in it. So when I started working with it, I was like, oh, wow, like this really is that foundational piece that's kind of behind everything. And that's why I love it so much, because it touches the largest, like the universe, and also the smallest, like subatomic particles. There's a big connection between what we're learning with science, with quantum physics, and then Kabbalah
Mm-hmm.
also, that connection.
Wow, that's powerful. Very cool. So you talked about the self-protection, which I'm very curious about. And I think that a lot of people listening
Mm,
have felt that way before. And especially this time of year when people have been traveling a lot and maybe visiting family or friends or relatives. And perhaps some energetics has gotten in their field where they feel like
mm,
they can't shake it, or they feel like they're experiencing the emotions or the pain of other relatives. What are some
mm,
things that you would tell people to do to
mm,
protect themselves in advance, or like while
mm,
they're around other people, as well as, let's say someone is sitting here now listening to this and they're like, I still feel the energy of my relatives 2 weeks ago. How do I rid
mm.
myself of this?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Like we actually like part of it is, I mean, if someone wanted like long-term protection, I would say come for initiation because that's going to give you your tool set. You know what I mean? And I can't like because we're a tradition, I can't just like pass you down on the internet like a ritual. That's not how it works. Like we have to be in each other's energy field and there's a context
Mhm.
for it and that kind of thing. So as far as the rituals go, like that's an important aspect, you know, is that it must be in person. I've heard people say, "Oh, I got initiated on the internet." I'm like, "Nope." No, you didn't happen. So um so that, you know, that for that part that's important. And then but if it's kind of an after the fact thing, like we actually do have healing for that, you know. So in the Solomonic tradition we have what's called a full aura clearing, and so it's actually includes something called a spell removal where we actually clean out your third eye, which is where a lot of energy collects, you know, from people around us. This is the energy center that we're getting information from our environment, and just negative thoughts from other people can get lodged there, you know. So we have a healing where we can just take, we can remove that. And then also what's called a cord cutting, and that can sound scary to some people, but sometimes it's necessary because we create these energetic connections with other people, and some are healthy and some are not, you know. So like for our loved ones where we have a good balanced relationship, it's a healthy, you know, connection. But then there might be unhealthy ones with different family members or former bosses or friends or whatever, and so we can just remove all of that as well and then let the person really be in their own energy and then decide going forward how they want to use their energy. So if they even want to reconnect with someone, right? Like I'll often have people come in for that aura clearing after they've had a breakup. And it's like, okay, you get to decide now if you want to actually respond to a text or a call from that person, you know,
Mhm.
and how you want to respond. And you don't have to, right? It's like if you cut that tie, you don't have to. But if you want to reconnect with them, you can also reconnect with the intent of how you want that energy to be. You know, it's like, okay, I have boundaries now and I'm not going to let this person step over them, you know,
Mm.
and be more strong in your own power. So there are ways to correct it, but in our tradition it's very specific, so it's harder to just tell someone what to do, you know, like over the internet. Sorry guys.
Yeah, true. That makes sense. Well, do
Yeah.
you have any top tips of
Mhm.
daily or weekly practices
Mhm.
that you found helpful in your life that you can share? Maybe it's as simple as journaling or yoga or something, a tool that you can provide us with that's perhaps not a you know, a tradition or within the lineage, something that doesn't have to be, you know, in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say the best tool for anyone that wants to improve their life and also know themselves and also clear themselves of energies is meditation, daily meditation. And I recommend getting up to an hour a day, you know, and that might sound a lot to people if they don't have a current practice, but you can start out even with, you know, 5 or 10 minutes a day and work your way up. And it might take some time. You know, I've had clients where it took them 3 or 6 months to get up to an hour a day, and that's
Mhm.
fine. It's kind of like exercise. You know, you train people with exercise, and it's like they're
Right.
run 27 miles their first day if they haven't been training, right? So but any type of meditation people can do, I think, is good if it works for them, you know. And to me, part of the point of meditation is that clearing, right? So it's we're able to release anything old that we don't need, and also release old ideas. It helps us cleanse our energy. So you know, if someone really wanted to get started and they had no experience, I would say do like 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night of really focused breathing, just to start getting
Mhm.
that and do that for 30 days and then see how you're feeling. And then at that 30 days you can add in more, you know, so you could add in, do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, and then maybe after that to add more time you could do like a guided meditation or something like that to really start
Mhm.
going. And then you'll actually start to get control of your own brain waves, and that's part of why we do meditation in our tradition and most old standing traditions, so even like Buddhism or yoga, like it's to really get control of how the mind is by doing this breathing and observing of the mind. And if people do that, it will really shift their life. Like even for people that haven't like taken initiation with me or didn't do a lot of healings, but if they just got up to an hour of meditation a day, I've seen people be able to like completely release anxiety or depression. You know, even people have called me later and been like, I felt good, so I worked with my doctor to get off my medication, you know. And so that
Wow.
happens because you can change your brain chemistry with that. Yeah.
So when you say controlling your brain waves,
Mm.
how do you get there and what does that look like? And how do you know if you've achieved that?
Ah, well, so let's say like this is a good example of someone coming into my office, right? And maybe they do have a lot of anxiety and they feel like their brain is just on a hamster wheel, right? And they're just like repeating thoughts or something like that. And so what I would do with them first is instigate the getting the meditation in somehow, right? And maybe for them, maybe we try to start out with 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, because that's going to get them a faster process of getting control of it. And so when someone is in that mind chatter and hamster wheel, that's really a beta brainwave state. And unfortunately, in our culture in the United States and different parts of the Western world, um, people are encouraged by the culture to keep their brain there, right? So it's like if
Ah.
you're just constantly like looking at and responding to stimuli and like you have a lot of caffeine or sugar or that kind of stuff, or even the ADHD meds, right? Because those are amphetamines, that keeps you in beta. And your body is not relaxing when you're in beta. And for me, I know my body takes 3 days to process caffeine. So if I have any caffeine, my brain can stick in beta if I'm not careful. Like, I mean, I've learned to manage it even if I have like caffeine or something, but it's harder. And so what you will notice is when you actually get to relax your brainwaves a bit into alpha, you'll feel more relaxed in your body. You won't feel that mental chatter or that um, maybe compulsiveness, right? Of like, I'm going to check my email a million times or whatever, right?
Right.
And so you'll feel a difference, and like it's an actual, difference someone can feel within themselves, and it would be also probably objectively seen by people around them of that they look more relaxed for one thing. And so being
Mm.
able to move into alpha is important, and that's where more creative ideas can come in from. If you're in beta, it's not as creative.
How can you tell if you're in alpha while you're meditating or if you're in beta? Because I bet you there's so many people out there that meditate every day and they're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there in silence, but their brain is like, I should do this today, and then this, and then this, and then this. Wait, I think I thought this 10 thoughts ago.
That's probably still beta, and so like part of it is it's subjective. So they have to learn themselves of like where they feel. And so a good way that I would say that you can tell if you're in alpha is you just feel more dreamy.
Mm.
Kind of like if you're in that state of like you've just done a really good yoga and you just feel kind of like a little bit removed from just that rush of reality, like, and things feel more dreamy and pretty, or like that feeling like of if you've made like a poem or maybe painted something, like there's a different energy that we get from that, and it's a little bit more like relaxed but also creative. And it's learning to understand our own cues. I mean, that's part of why I do meditation coaching with people though too, is because I can see outside of them and help them learn that. Um, but then the actual goal is to get to theta. So it's a different brainwave. So
Ah.
there's alpha, beta, theta. I mean, delta people mostly aren't in except in like deep sleep and anesthesia. So that's a very advanced meditation, and I'm not trying to recommend that for a beginner. But theta is something that we can all do also, and we naturally should have that every night as part of our sleep. But unfortunately, also that is often not part of our sleep because of caffeine or medication. And also, like, we're subjected to a lot of artificial lights, which change how our brainwaves work as well. So to me, that's like kind of the core of a lot of sleep disorders, which I also used to have, is that we're not getting into theta or enough theta. And that's where the actual healing of our mind and our physical body happens.
Mm.
And so that's part of the benefit of also getting a meditation practice. You can really heal a lot just by getting a half an hour of theta meditation a day.
Mm.
And the way that you're there at first, actually, when I'm working with people, is they usually fall asleep during that.
Oh, so is that a good thing to fall asleep during meditation?
It's okay as you're beginning, and then later you want to get control so you can still stay aware, but in that brainwave state.
Mm.
And so there's a transition time, and people are like learning, because often that is the only experience people have at the theta brainwave state, is that it's right that weird dreamy part when you're going to sleep, to where if someone like tried to wake you up, you'd be kind of like, where am I? Like, and that feeling, that's
Mhm.
that theta brainwave. And it's really important though. And so if we're not getting it when we're sleeping, then our body's not repairing itself. So you'll hear of things like, especially when people have something like sleep apnea and their body's not regenerating, like there's a lot of degenerate disease that can happen to the body when people have that, because they're just not getting their theta. But a way that you can take control of that is to do meditation to where you get into theta. And it
Mhm.
does take time, right? I mean, it's like training, just how personal and physical training are to the body. It's training the mind and then learning your own cues. But it's an amazing tool, because if you can get yourself at will into alpha or theta, you can shift so much. Like, you can take yourself completely out of panic. you can, I've known people that have done their own like self-hypnosis that way through meditation for anesthesia and not use anesthesia for surgery, which I
Wow.
haven't done that myself, but there's
That is powerful.
seen it, or also childbirth, and but also like just really healing of different things like depression, anxiety, which is amazing, right? Because it's something like a fifth of the population in the United States has anxiety and a fifth have depression, something to that effect. And it's like if people could just get control of their brain waves, right, through an hour meditation a day, it could stop a lot of that, which would be amazing.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I'm curious if you know, for so you said theta, you get it in sleep. Does that happen during REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, all of
Mm.
the sleep?
It's usually a transition thing. I don't think it's as much the REM. I mean, from my understanding of it, it's kind of like when we're having that first induction into our sleep cycle, there's a period
Mm,
of theta, and then it cycles through for each person. So, like, some people are on a 60-minute sleep cycle and some are on a 90, from what I know of the science of it. And so it depends on the person, but it should be cycling through probably right before the REM, I think. So, but having REM doesn't necessarily mean you have theta, as far as I know.
ah, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So would that affect how someone wakes up, like their energy in the morning, depending on how much theta they've gone into during the time of sleep? Hmm.
Definitely. And so that's why, there's like a big movement for sleep hygiene, right? Like turning off our electronics and turning off light and everything like that so that our body can have the right chemistry and the right environment to be able to get that. Hmm.
That's really cool. I love that phrase that you just said, sleep hygiene. I've never heard it called that before. That is
Yeah.
so cool. So going back to theta, in terms of that is the state that you want to get in for meditation. What are your thoughts on like listening to theta frequency music while you meditate?
I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily bad about it, and I think it can be good for to help people get to, especially if it helps people cue in to how they're feeling there. But I do like it when people can manage everything on their own without any external tools too. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
Mm,
like we'll let a kid have training wheels for their bike because we want them to be safe and learn how to,
right.
and that's cool. But I think also over time, it's good to be able to get yourself there by yourself with nothing around you, right? Because we always, as long as we're physically alive, we always have our body and our breath, and
Mm-hmm.
those are the dependable things we can have. And you might, be somewhere where you can't have your headphones or electricity or whatever. So it's nice to be able to do it without. But I think it can all be good for training, like to
Mm-hmm.
yourself to where you want to be. Hmm.
What would you say for, I guess, the differences of meditating alone without stimulus and meditating with an audio where it's guided meditation?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar. Like, I think that any tools that people can use to help themselves are good. Like, if it helps you get to where you want to go. But I think it is nice to be able to eventually be able to do it yourself. And like, I do a combination of things. Like, sometimes I feel like I want to listen to some special sounds or, guided meditation or something like that. And sometimes I just really want to do it myself. And so I switch between them so that I can have utility with all of the tools. But I think it's good, especially with the breath, to also be able to do that yourself. And like at first someone might need a guided meditation even for the breath, right, to get back in touch,
Mm-hmm.
getting a real good deep breath down in the belly and really expanding the ribs and really getting this good flow. There's different counted breaths you can use. There's like circular breathing, and there's like 4, 7, 8. There's all different kinds of ways to learn to breathe more. But a lot of people are very detached from their breath. So at the beginning, it's like whatever they need to use to get back in touch and have a good cycle with that, I think is great. But I do recommend, like, especially over time, to be able to have times when you don't need anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow. So many awesome tools and things. Well, I'm curious, is there any last things that you would say are really important to the overall holistic health of a human being besides meditation and, setting boundaries with oneself?
Mm. Well, I mean, we're a complete being on so many dimensions. And so, you know, when people like maybe start delving into spiritual stuff, they might forget the physical aspect, right? And so we need to be able to have utility with all of it, and so I recommend always having some kind of physical practice as well, whatever that is. For some people it might be yoga, for some people it might be running or swimming, whatever it is, just keep the body moving, make sure that you're doing things in the physical, um, as best you can,
Hmm.
along with whatever spiritual practice you're doing, just to make sure that there's balance between the realms.
Hmm. I
Mhm.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
As a fitness, expert, that is such a tool for people, and it can be very meditative as well. I'm
Yeah.
curious, if you know anything about the science behind the state that you're in. Let's say someone is on a trail run and they're feeling connected to nature and they're experiencing runner's high.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that brain state once you get there and you're sweating and you're, at a point of complete physical, you know,
Mm-hmm.
peak endurance and the benefits associated, like in a way, it's very meditative. So, how would you say it's different and similar to meditation?
Mm. Well, there's a lot of ways we can do moving meditation, and we definitely recommend that in our tradition. We have a certain kind of moving meditation that we do, and other people might use Tai Chi or, but like running can be that way too. So for me, I mean, we can't make progress unless we're working our physicality along with our spiritual muscles. So they're both important together, and there's a lot of different ways to change our brain chemistry, and exercise is a really good way to do that. And that runner's high, like you're talking about, like there's endorphins involved, and it's something that our body gives us as a reward for an output, and so I think it's very beneficial. I mean, we need to use our body the way it was intended, or it will atrophy,
Hmm.
and so we're getting a reward for that, or sometimes even we get a reward for extreme things, right? Like doing things that are beyond like what most people do with their bodies, and but it's good. I mean, part of what I see a lot of times now in the United States is that people are very sedentary. So we sit a lot, at work or in the car, or there's TV or couches or whatever. And so part of us is atrophying from that. And that I think can cause some aspects of depression and anxiety, because
Hmm.
as like hunter gatherers, thousands of years ago, we would have been moving all the time. Like there would have been probably 14 hours a day of movement, and that wouldn't have necessarily been like gathering, but we would have been playing physically with other people. We would have been exploring, and we're just not doing that. And so that sedentary aspect is making our personal energy stores, which we call chi, in this tradition also, to be low. So we need to move, and exercise helps move the body, but it also helps get out any of that like excess cortisol, right? We need to run that off or work that off somehow, and that will really help the overall health, but also helps our mental state, so they go together very well.
I love how you explain that in such a interesting and unique way, relating it to chi and your levels of chi, almost like, calibrating the system that,
Mhm.
the vehicle that transports your soul in this dimension. So very cool. Well, I know you have a bunch of exciting things going on. You've got an awesome Facebook group. You've
Oh,
got
thank you.
that fun event coming up. So if people are listening to this and they're inspired to learn more about metaphysics, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is urbanmagic.net, urbanmagick.net, and my contact info is there. And then I'm also on Facebook at Urban Magic, URBANMAGICK. And people can just message me or call. I'm totally happy to have conversation with people about it, especially if they're interested in adding something new, like a new layer to their life. Like I'm there for that.
Yay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing, Karla. You've got such an abundance of knowledge and wisdom from so many different lineages and traditions. And thank you for bringing your knowledge and education to us on all these different things that are so exciting to explore more into. And I appreciate your unique offerings on your take of meditation and how it's explained, I feel like, in a different way from your perspective, which is really cool to, pick up different angles of the benefits and really what we're trying to achieve out of meditation. So thank you so much for being on the show. We loved having you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
yes, if you listeners would like to hear anything in particular on the next episode of the Fit Through Love Show, I would love for you to send me a message on Instagram at Fit Through Love. And I look forward to hearing you guys back. Would love for you guys to rate and review the podcast, leave us an honest review, and let us know what you're loving and what you'd like to see more of. And we'll catch you guys later on the next episode of the Fit Through Love Show. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Yay!